That's really discouraging right here at the start. But she's, 3 or 4, so it'd be all right. I mean, she's young. So everybody else ought to pay attention, though. I want to preach on the responsibilities of the children or of the child, or if you got more than one child, but, as an individual, you got some responsibilities. We've been through the adults in the home, the husband, the wife, the father, the mother. If the adults are not right with God, I'll say this, if the adults are not right with God and doing what they need to be doing, it will affect the children. And it's our job as parents, and I've tried to go through this last 4 weeks to raise up our children in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. It's the father's responsibility to make sure they're in the house of God and spiritual things in their life are being attended to. And it's the mother's responsibility to be the keeper at home and to be able to raise them in the home and things of that nature. Now, the father and the mother both do those things, but if the parents are not right with God, it will affect the children, and the children probably are going to live their life out of the will of God because their parents live their life out of the will of God. So it's not just up to the adults to do right, though, kids. Y'all listen to me. My kids listen to me. All you other kids listen to me. Pay attention. But you got a responsibility in your home to do right, too. It's not just up to the parents. It's up to the children, too. And so verse number 1, children obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. So the first responsibility of a child is this. They need to heed. They need to heed. They need to obey. I believe this obedience goes more so for when you're under their roof, when a child's living under the roof of a mom and dad. Most kids stay at home at least until 18, some even longer than that. I think I was 19 when I moved out of my house, and my mom had my bags packed for me, so she's ready to see me leave, and she acts like she wasn't, but I was just trying to help you. But no, she was ready to see me go, I guess. I don't know, but anyway, she got me out, and I think Noah was still living back home then, but anyway, I don't know that she was really happy about it or whatever, but I know she helped pack my bags. I know that much. So anyway, most kids stay home at least till they're 18. Some, some even longer than that. I'll say this, though, kids. There comes a point in time you need to move out of your parents' house. Now, there are situations where you got to move back in. They get elderly and sickly, and you got to care for them, and it's a lot easier for you just to live there full-time versus living at your house and going back and forth, to and fro, and sometimes you got to do that. That is what it is, and you may have a place to be able to call your home, or you may have to move in with them just because of the circumstances, either that or put them in a nursing home. You definitely don't want to do that if you can help it, and I commend people for doing that, but there comes a point in time that you need to move out. But as children, as long as you're living under your parents' roof, you need to abide by their rules. And that's obedience is what that is. That's heeding to what mom and dad has to say. Colossians 3:20 says, children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing unto the Lord. It's pleasing in the sight of God to obey your mom and dad. It's right in the sight of God to obey your mom and dad. It don't matter if you're a young child. You could be, 5 or 1 or 10 or whatever. You could be a preteen. You could be a teenager. It doesn't matter if you're in your 20s. If you're in your 30s, you need to get out of their house, the way I see it. But it doesn't really matter the age. If you were abiding under their roof, you need to live by their rules. They're the one that pays the bills, puts food on the table, puts clothes on your back. Most kids, and I was pretty bad when I was a teenager and gave my mom fits and stuff, and so I'm trying to preach to you so you do better than I did, all right? You ask my mom, and she'll tell you I gave her fits when I was a teenager, and I'm not proud of that by any stretch of the imagination, but I did. I mean, I'm just honest with you. Confess your faults, but most kids, when they get 16 and they get their driver's license, they think they know everything, they can do whatever they want to. That's how I felt when I was 16. I mean, I'm just honest with you. I went to work and got a truck. My dad took out a loan for me or whatever, teach me the value of paying back debt, that you take out. And so I bought a little Ranger, and man, I fixed that thing up, had it look good and all that stuff. But they paid my insurance, so without any insurance, it didn't matter if I had a vehicle or not. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So they still had a stranglehold on me, to be honest, so that might not be a bad thing to do, but I would recommend, side note, if you're going to do one or the other, pay for the car, pay for the insurance, I would pay for the car instead of the insurance, because insurance goes sky high whenever, a young kid gets on there and has a wreck or whatever, not even a wreck, but anyway, that's just an insurance agent speaking to you there. So anyhow, if your parents tell you no as a kid, you know what the best thing for you to do is? Accept it. I lived this myself. When my mom and dad told me no, I did not like it. I didn't like it. There's some kids, their parents never tell them no, and that's part of the problem. You know, there's some things that Mom and Dad, they told me no about or whatever, and I'd pitch a fit, and I'd keep, vexing their soul, I guess, and eventually they'd give in, and just because I'm so annoying is really what the main thing about that was, and I still am, and just about got a shout out of Amber on that one, I think, but, when I was a kid, Mom and Dad, I'd ask for something, or they'd just tell me no about something, and, I was mad about it. I'd go to my room, I hate you, or slam a door or whatever, and all that stuff. Y'all don't act like, some of y'all never said that. I hope you never do. Reed slammed the door the other day. I said, I'll take a door off the hinges. You ain't going to do that junk in my house. Somebody said amen. But anyway, there's just something, and locking the doors and all that. Y'all not put a lock on a kid's door. Go ahead and lock a door. Y'all just open access. My dad, I'm just terrible at thinking about things in my mind right now. My dad, he would come in my room, and as he was opening the door, he would knock on it. You're supposed to keep a door closed, then knock on it, right? And then when they say you can enter or come in or whatever, you open the door. But it was his house, so I guess he did whatever he wanted to do. As he was opening the door, he'd knock on the door, let me know, hey, I'm coming in, give me a little bit of notice. But, that's a good thing, I guess. But anyway, my mom and dad, they'd tell me no about stuff. I'd get mad and pitch a fit about it, but I'll be honest with you, I don't have any emotional trauma over that either. These guys that go out and murder a bunch of people, they say, well, my dad didn't take me fishing, blah, 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 when he was growing up. And that's just a bunch of bulls, all that really amounts to. And I don't hate my parents now either for telling me no when I was a kid. Some people hate their parents for telling them no. I mean, you can hate them all you want to. A bunch of them are just a bunch of spoiled brats, and they need to learn a lesson every now and again. Isn't that right? And so when your mom and dad tells you no, it is not going to kill you. Some kids think it is. And whoever put the candy and all that is really smart financially, that they put the candy right there at the registers in the grocery stores. They're really smart financially, but somebody ought to really do something bad to them. Because, a kid, they touch everything. There's one time we was in Walmart, I didn't see what was going on, and it was Sawyer, I think, wasn't it? He wanted one of them Hershey's cookies and cream bars, or what, the white kinds, what he calls them. We was doing that self-checkout business, you know what I'm talking about? I checked it out, and I put it in the bag while I heard a beep, and I didn't scan nothing. Well, he had put that candy bar up there, and I was mad about that. I mean, that thing was like $2.50, and I thought, what? I mean, come on. And I said, son, we've got some at home, and we keep them at home all the time. But no, I'd spend $2.50 on a single serve one whenever he's got a whole bag of them at home. Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, you got to be careful about them. And then whoever did that, I mean, they're really smart financially, and they're probably rich, whoever made that format. But, it just is what it is. But just because they tell you no, you're going to be all right. I promise you this. I promise you that. If your mom and dad, and I'm preaching to myself, even still, but looking back over my childhood, like I said, I gave my mom fits, I gave my dad's fit about some things. But I wasn't the greatest. I was good at school, man. I was real good at school. Made A's and never gave me problems at school. But, man, when I got home, it was kind of a bad deal. I'd just go in my room and shut the door. I mean, I would. There's just some things I just didn't do right growing up. I'll just be honest about it. If your mom and dad tells you to do something, just do it. Don't backtalk them. Don't call them old man or old lady. Some kids do that, and I think, man, you just need to get a good belt across the rear end is what you need. You may think that they're wrong, and honestly, your parents are going to be wrong about some things sometimes. They're human. You got to understand, and that's why a lot of kids have bitterness against their parents is because, well, my parents made mistakes, and they didn't do things right. Well, yeah, they're a human. You're not going to do everything right if you have kids or if you don't have kids. So just come to grips with it. Come to the point that, hey, my mom and dad, they didn't do everything right. But, the majority of things, they tried to raise me right and raise me in church. And they made sure there's food on the table maybe if they didn't raise you in church. And made sure you was taken care of and your needs. You ought to be thankful for those things. But, you may think that they're wrong, but it's not your job to correct your mom and dad. Let God do that. And maybe let, mom and dad work those things out together. It's not your place to be able to do that. But believe it or not, your parents should know more than you because they've been alive longer than you have. People get to be 16, 15, especially boys. Sometimes girls, give fits too, but they think they just know everything. Their parents don't know nothing. Well, as you grow up, you kind of figure out mom and dad knew a few things, They knew a lot more than I thought they did. That's just kind of the way it is. Kids, the clothes you're wearing right now, all y'all are clothed, thankfully, but the clothes you're wearing right now, you didn't buy those clothes. God gave your mom and dad a job to be able to work, and your parents bought that stuff for you. The shoes you're wearing, you didn't buy them. Kids have phones, tablets, and video game systems or whatever, they got nowadays. And I mentioned about them losers that play that Minecraft and all that stuff, need to play something that's awesome like Mario Kart or Wii Sports or whatever. You know, some preachers would absolutely rake me over the coals if they knew I played video games, but I do every now and again. I mean, I'm not going to sit in there and just let everything go to pot though either. I mean, I got some things I got to take care of and do. Job got to work and all that, but you know, things that you've got, your parents bought those for you. Last time I checked, there ain't none of you kids working a regular job. And I'll be honest, even if you're a teenager and you're working a regular job, you are not making enough money to be able to have all the things that you have. Whether it's clothes or shoes or vehicles or insurance or gas or a good home to live up underneath. You can't even rent a place nowadays for $1,000. That's cheap. It's a 400 square foot closet. It's about all that it is if you can even get that. I mean, it's crazy the cost of living. You know, somebody's got to buy the things that you have. I don't know how many of you adults make, and it ain't my business to ask, and I'm not going to ask because it ain't my business. But let's just say, I'm going to throw a number out there, and some of y'all might think this is high. Some of y'all might think that it's low. And I'll look at the facial reactions to see if you're kind of putting your nose up at it, then that means you've made more. But if you kind of look like this, then I know it means you've, not made that much. So let's just say you make $40 an hour. Let's just say, looking around real close, see who's looking. Let's just say you make $40 an hour. That's a decent amount of money per hour. But by the time you take taxes out, taxation's theft, but, by the time you take taxes out, benefits, and, whatever else you got, let's just say that's, net's probably $30 an hour. That's probably too much. But I looked up what an iPhone 17 costs. I just wanted to know. Them things, a phone costs $1,100. $1,100. So if you bring home $30 an hour, that's 36 hours you have had to work to buy a cell phone. That's a whole week's worth of work, just about it. Isn't that right? Y'all get what I'm saying? And some of y'all are going to feel real crazy, all the things you bought your kids after I throw out some of these numbers and stuff. I mean, a whole week's worth of your life gone for an iPhone. Gone. Now, you shouldn't buy your kids a phone so they can have free reign on it. You're just asking for problems if you let them stay on their phone all the time. And if there's no kind of guardrails and safeties up to be able to, checks and balances kind of thing. But you get my point, hopefully, that's what I'm saying. An iPhone, $1,100 for a phone. That's insane. I went on eBay. My dad's still a flip phone guy, and he could use an iPhone. I don't care what he says. He could, or he could use a smartphone. He's a flip phone guy, just old school, don't want to be new school or whatever. He takes pride. Now, I've got my flip phone still, Me and Mom, for his birthday or something, he broke one of his phones, snapped it in half or whatever he did. I don't know what he did. But I went on eBay and found him 2 brand new flip phones for like $80. Them things last forever if you don't break them in half, or throw them down or smash them or we've had a lot of experiences with phone things, eggs busting on them and out in the ocean and all that stuff. And we got one in the bottom of Carter's Lake. I mean, there's phones everywhere. But what's the point in buying a $1,100 phone, I guess is what I'm trying to say. School's fixing to start back up. And Whitfield will go back, I guess, Friday, and then Murray County go back next month. And you go back to school, clothes shopping. Everybody, I guess, did that as kids. You'd get a new pair of shoes, some of y'all, or maybe not, or maybe a few clothes, or get some hand-me-downs from somebody else, or you'd get something new to you, whether it was new or not. That was a $120 pair of Nikes that you're wearing, that wasn't free. I know people say $120 for a pair of shoes. You're right. I'm wearing a pair of shoes right now I bought like 5 years ago at Academy for like $30. And them things sat in a closet, and I'll wear the hound of them things till the sun. I don't want to. That's too much money for a pair of shoes. I know if you're a working man, you got to have a good pair of boots or a good pair of shoes or whatever. You stay on your feet all the time. I mean, you need to spend a decent amount of money because you don't want to get Walmart shoes or something like that. But if that's all you got, that's all you got. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. But these kids, they think that all this stuff just boom pops out of thin air. Mom, can I have this? Boom. They just think that. I don't know what they think. I thought the same thing when I was a kid, and I learned that real quick. Like that's just not the way things work out. You can't get everything you ask for, and sometimes Mom and Dad want to really see if you really want it, and they'll put you to work or make you go work or do something, and that's a good thing to do, but, your Mom and Dad had to work for the things that they have. And kids, you don't need to expect everything to be handed to you either. Mom and Dad, parents, make your kids earn their keep. It's real popular now. Kids have chores now, and they get an allowance. I get however much it is. Tooth fairy, inflation on tooth fairies or whatever all that junk is, it's insane now. They expect like $20. Kids are getting like $100 a pop for these teeth nowadays. And I thought, man, I got $1. If I got $1, that's a lot of money to me back then when I was a kid. But make them earn their keep. You're not going to have that free child labor forever. Right. Isn't that right? I mean, make them mow the grass. Learn them how to run a weed eater if they're a boy. I mean, it wouldn't be bad if it's a girl either. If she get a, she needs to learn how to weed eat herself too. There ain't nothing wrong with that. Take the trash out, sweep, mop, and put up the clothes and wash the clothes, dry the clothes or whatever. Whatever else needs to be done. You need to teach your children, hey, there is value in working for what you have. You know, when you get to be old, or you get to be older and out of high school or college and get a job, they're not just going to say, hey, here's a house, do you want it? No, you got to have a down payment, or you got to have credit, or you got to have something to be able to buy it. It's not going to just be handed to them. Ain't nothing wrong with teaching them the value of a dollar. And kids nowadays, they don't want to do nothing. I didn't want to do nothing when I was a teenager. My dad, I've told you all this story, it's been a long time ago. I used to be the world's worst. I like to cook, but I don't like to clean. I like to cook, but I don't like to clean it up. I felt like, well, I was cooking, so why did I have to clean it up? I mean, if you're cooking for other people, that's right. But if you're cooking for yourself, that's not right. Isn't that right? So if you're cooking for yourself, you got to do the cooking, the cleaning, the everything. If you're cooking for other people, I feel like it's, hey, I cook, y'all can clean. That's the way I feel. And I still feel that way. And I think that's the right way to live by. But anyway, people start cooking, I'd start cleaning. Isn't that right? So I don't mind do that. I know how to run a dishwasher. Anyhow, I used to not wash the dishes. I mean, I'd make, eggs, and pans, how they get when you make eggs and all that junk, just a nasty mess. And I used every, pan, pot, and bowl, and utensil and all that stuff. You're going to make a mess if you cook. Y'all know what I'm saying? If somebody really cooks, you're going to make a mess. And if you don't make a mess, you're either cleaning as you go, or you're really not cooking, and you're probably just buying something from the store and throwing it in the microwave. Isn't that right? And so anyway, I was the world's worst. World's worst. I'd cook, and I'd leave the dishes piled up. My dad, man, he can go 0 to 100 fast, but he'd come in there, and he'd say, clean them dishes up. I'd be in my room, just kick back, on my bed or whatever. Dishes cleaned up. Yeah, I could just tell. It's just getting madder and madder every time. He told me like 4 or 5 times. Well, they got to where he just, you know what he did? He brought them dirty dishes, and he put them on my bed. Because I didn't go clean them up. You know what I did? I didn't want them on my bed. I moved them a little bit, and I sat there, and I thought, this is not that big of a deal. Then he started, how dirty dishes kind of smell a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And I kind of got that smell, and I thought, I just don't, I'm going to go clean these. And he knew how to be able to get me to do what I need to do. Sometimes he still does, to be honest now. But you can't blame kids for everything. I won't say that, though. Kids are Amber's told me this, and I've seen it coaching sports and all that. Kids are a product of the environment that they grow up in. If you see a child and you see their parents, you think, man, that makes a lot of sense now. You know what I'm saying? Good or bad. Whether they're a good kid and you see their parents and they're respectable people and they're polite, you can see, hey, that makes sense. But it could be a bad kid. It could be some kid that, they just need some help, I guess you could say. And, they're hard to be able to get their attention and things of that nature. Then you see their parents and you think, that makes a lot of sense now. But kids are a product of the environment that they grow up in. And I've seen that as a coach and stuff, and it's just the way that it is. But kids are going to be like their parents in a lot of ways. Isn't that right? You don't do as I say and not as I do. No, they're going to do what you do. Maybe they'll do what you say, but it don't matter what you say if you're not doing it yourself. And so, kids are going to be like their parents in a lot of ways. That's who they learn from. So parents, it is our job to train them to be able to heed what we say and that, hey, we mean business. Kids are going to mess up. They're a kid. And I'll say this too. You need to let a kid be a kid. There's too many kids that are having to be adults now because of the family circumstance and situation that they're in. Maybe the oldest daughter is kind of acting as a mother because the mother is sorry and good for nothing and won't do anything. I don't know. Y'all, there's people like that, and that's just the way it is. And sometimes kids, the situation that they're, it's not their fault. It's their parents' fault for, putting them in bad situations, whether it could be, abuse of drugs or anything of that nature. And so, that's just the way it is. But look, kids should be able to be a kid too. They're going to mess up. They're going to spill the sweet tea. They're going to leave crumbs all over the floor. Been dealing with ants this past week. Them crumbs are a killer, I'll tell you what. Bible talks about learning from the ant. I don't know. Them ants are annoying, and so I don't know if I need to. They're persistent. I guess that's what I need to learn from them. They're going to be a kid. They're going to hit the ball in the gutter 5 times after I told you not to. I told him. I said the other day, I was outside working. He's out there hitting his bat and ball. I said, son, if that goes on the roof, you're done. If it goes in the gutter, you're done. He came over to me. He put the bat down. He said, Dad, I'm done. And so y'all are laughing and really encouraging him, and it's my fault for telling that. But it was funny. But, you know, I got to get that little giant ladder out that weighs about 1,000,000 pounds, feels like, and got to get that thing out and get the balls out of the gutter and all that stuff. And, you know, that's just the way it is. I know when I was a kid I did that. And if I didn't do it, it's because our house didn't have gutters on it, probably. I mean, that's just being honest about it. There's things, and I mean, remember things about messing up. But look, even as adults, we still mess up. And we're still learning. And we still have to come to the realization that we're not where we really need to be, and there's still room for improvement, and there's still things we need to learn from. But even as a child, that's even more so, because the only way they're going to learn is by you teaching them. The Bible says, train up a child and the way he should go, and when he's old he won't depart from it. As parents, our task and our job is to train and to teach their children, and we got to understand they'll be kids and kids will be kids, but at the same time we've got to let them understand that obeying your mom and dad is biblical and right in the sight of God. So let's go to Ephesians 6, verse 2 and 3. Verses 2 and 3. Talked about children obeying your parents and the Lord, for this is right. Verse 2, honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. So the responsibilities of a child is this. They need to heed, but they need to honor too. We know these verses come from the Ten Commandments in Exodus 20 and 12. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So that's what's known as a conditional promise. So what that means is a conditional promise is not fulfilled. The promise is not fulfilled unless the conditions are met. Conditional promise. So that makes sense what I'm saying. And so if you want to live long on the earth, you need to honor your mom and dad. If you do, your days will be long. If you don't, your days will be short. Now, I'll say this. I believe there's some children early graves because they didn't honor their mom and dad. Now, not every person that's died in early death is because, hey, they dishonored their mom and dad, and we got to understand and come to terms with that. There's other factors and circumstances, but I do believe there are some children that are in early graves and some young adults and maybe some preteens or teens that are in early graves because they just didn't honor their mom and dad. And that's a sobering thought. It's a hard thought. And that's something that's not really talked about much anymore. But, years ago, y'all used to hear of stories of preachers' kids and things of that nature that died in early death. The thing about God is He's only going to let one of His children go so far before He pulls them out. And maybe the reason why there's so many young people living longer lives and even disobeying their mom and dad, it's probably because they're not one of God's. It's probably what it is. God will only let His own go so far. And there are some also that, He's going to take out. That's just the way that it is. He brought them in, He bring them out. That's just kind of the way that it is. But there are some that are in early graves because they dishonored their mom and their dad. The obedience, I feel like, the obeying part or heeding, I really feel like that obedience is more for when you're at home, under their roof, they're paying the bills, and you're really not, trying to, and even if they charge you a little bit of rent, ain't nothing wrong with that, because it's far cheaper than getting somewhere on your own, isn't that right? And so even if they do that, that'll be all right, and parents, y'all could do that, and maybe lay it up for them and give it to them later on for, a down payment on a house or something, or if you want to use it, pay your bills. Ain't nothing wrong with that, too. That food's not free, and the power bill's not free, and the water's not free, and that roof's not free, and none of that's free, so there ain't nothing wrong with that. Isn't that right? But, there's just, I believe the obedience under the roof is really for when you're at home under the roof, but the honor goes beyond that. It goes for when you're moved out and on your own, and even though you're not living with your parents anymore, you should still want to honor them. You shouldn't want to bring shame to the family name. There are some people that are in your family, probably, or maybe in other families, but probably in your family. There's some people, they want to drag that family name through the mud, and they don't care. It don't matter. They could be there used to be a busted paper. I don't know if there's one of those anymore. There probably is, but, there's a thing called Facebook now, and so people can go on there and all the sheriffs and all that stuff, put everybody they arrest and all that mess on there, so you don't even have to go to the store and buy that stuff. But, they wouldn't care to be in every busted paper from here to Florida. It wouldn't matter to them if they got arrested in this county, in Whitfield County, in Gordon County. It don't matter to them. They have no shame, no regard, and I know sin's the problem. We understand that and we know that. But, there's some people, they just do that, and their parents may be living, their parents may already be dead, but they are not honoring their parents. You will honor them or dishonor them the rest of your life. It don't matter if you got their last name or not. Surely you do, but even if you do or don't, that last name that you have, the family name that you have, you know what? That ought to be something that you take and you really take responsibly. Whether you had good parents or whether you had bad parents, whether you need to follow in their footsteps or whether you don't, you should still want to live a life that would honor them. Most of y'all had respectable parents. You had good mom and dads. Maybe you didn't do everything right. Nobody does. They may not have raised you in church, and I don't know, but I'd say most of y'all probably had pretty good parents, and you want to be able to keep that family name, that last name that you have, respectable in the community among the debtors and the banks and the institutions and the stores, and you want to be somebody that pays your debts. You don't want to be somebody that hears that last name and says, well, so-and-so, he's a crook, and he's a thief, and he ain't nothing but a good for nothing. I mean, you don't want that. And maybe you had bad parents that had that last name that really, they didn't care about the last name, and it didn't really matter to them what kind of life that they lived. Well, you can take that last name and make something of it and make a good name among the community of somebody that is respectable and a hard worker and somebody that the community could trust and a good, a good old boy or a good old girl, whatever you want to say. You could honor your family name even if your parents maybe didn't. When the prodigal came to his father and he wanted that inheritance, I'm sure that was a slap in the face to that dad. In our day and time, you don't get an inheritance until they die. I know in Bible days, the firstborn was the one that really, he was the firstborn, got the most of the stuff and all that kind of stuff. And that dad wasn't even dead yet. That prodigal came up to him and said, Father, give unto me the portion of goods that fall unto me. That prodigal didn't work for none of that. Of course, the father could have said no, but, Jesus had a purpose in regards to that. But, he didn't say, the father wasn't even dead, and it didn't say the father was ready to go ahead and, give him, but the son wanted that inheritance to go blow it in the far country. That's what he wanted. And so the prodigal's father was still living, and he didn't honor his father. I know the father could have said no, but he let his son go and learn the hard way. And there's some times that you come to I guess this is a hard balance as a parent, and I'll have to learn it one day, and I'm already at the beginning stages of learning it. And as you grow up, there's a balance of a parent that is this. I can keep telling them no and refusing to let them do it and doing everything in my power possible to keep them away from whatever I'm trying, but there comes a point in time they got to learn it for themselves on their own. And I haven't written, of course, they become teenagers, and that's really when the battle, the preteen, the teenagers, and things like that. And I guess that's when it really starts, the pressure really starts getting turned up and things of that nature. But there comes a point in time that you are doing everything you can possibly do besides chaining them to their bed. You're doing everything you can do. But there comes a point in time they got to go off on their own, and they do have to learn it the hard way, unfortunately. I wish that didn't happen. And y'all that's been through family problems and problems with your children or grandchildren or people, or people that's had problems, that's a hard place to be in life, I would imagine. I mean, I've seen it with my own family, not my kids. I hope I don't ever have to see it with my kids, but my own family, my brothers, and my family that's around. I've seen it happen in their life and unfold in their life, and you just got to learn out and learn it on your own. And that's a hard place to be. But the prodigal's father, he could have told him no, but he ended up letting him go. And we know the story. The prodigal went out and he ended up in the hog pen. You should obey your parents as long as you live under their roof. Now, when you get out on your own, I think you ought to obey them to an extent. But you also got to leave and cleave too. The parents shouldn't be expecting the kid, as long as they're in good enough health, the parents shouldn't be expecting the kid to come home and do everything at their house. They got to leave and cleave. They got a family of their own now. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Now, if you need help with something or you can't do it yourself, call your kids and let them come help you. That'd be great. But if you get to be, you're 70, 80 years old, the kids, they ought to try to help you out a little bit and things of that nature. And if you can't do something, call them up. That'd be the least they could do, be able to do that. And so there ain't nothing wrong with that. But as long as you're living under their roof, you ought to obey them for sure. When you move out, you ought to try your best to obey them still. But at the very least, you ought to honor them with your life. At the very least. Don't do anything that would bring shame on the family name. You ought to be proud of your family name, and you ought not do anything that would bring a reproach on it. Sister Rhoda, if you'd come, I'm through. You know, even though a parent, any parent here, if we'd be honest, even though a parent will love a child no matter what they do, it don't matter what they do. That's still your child. You hate the sin that they're in. You hate the situation they're in. You hate the things they're doing, and you wish they wouldn't do it. You'll love that child, though, regardless. Even though a parent will love a child no matter what, that child should still not do anything that would not honor their parents. Because a lot of kids fall back on that. Well, I know my mom, especially moms. Dads are a little bit tougher around the edges and things of that nature. They should be to an extent. But parents, you know, fathers and mothers, you know, mothers are more sensitive most of the time. And they're drawn by their emotion, and they're hard, and they're willing to put up with more. Most women, now not all of them, but most of them are willing to put up with more things and this and that nature. But, you know, even though a child, they could fall back and they could say, well, my mom and dad, you know, I know they'll still love me even though I do this. Parents, you ought to let them know that what they're doing is not right either. You may say, well, I'm afraid I'll make them mad. They may not come around anymore. I wish that didn't happen. Because if we'd all be honest, we do things that our mom and dads don't necessarily like. Our parents probably do things that we don't. I could tell you things my mom and dad do that I don't like, and they're saved and going to church and living right. There's things that they do that I just don't like. And if they would be honest, mom and dad especially, they'd tell you things that I do that they don't like. But you know what I still do? I still try to call them on the phone. I don't go over there often, but I ought to go over there more, but I still try to go around them. Just because I may do things a little different, or just because I'm one way and they're another way, don't mean you still can't fellowship and be able to be around each other and spend a meal on Thanksgiving or Christmas, and even in my own family right now. I mean, I got junk going on that they won't all get together because of junk that's happened, you know, that's really somebody else's fault, and they're just not owning up to it. It's what it amounts to. And I hate it. I wish it didn't happen. If you can still get around your family at Thanksgiving and Christmas and not have to worry about an atomic bomb just dropping off and somebody, stepping on the wrong eggshell or whatever you want to say, I mean, if you can still do that, you ought to praise God for it. Will there be conflict? Absolutely. Will there be, things that y'all disagree on? Absolutely. Will there be things that maybe your children are for and you're not, or you're for and they're not? Absolutely. That's just the way things go. But you ought to be able to put the pride aside, and you ought to be able to say, look, you're my child, I'm your parent, or vice versa, and I still want to be around you, and I still want to do things that would be respectable to you. But the thing about it is, I don't know. I mean, there's fault to go around everywhere, okay? I'm not saying the parents and the grandparents are always right, because I'll be honest, sometimes they're wrong. But the kids are wrong too. There's just certain things that if you're going to do as a child, your mom and dad don't stand for that stuff and they don't like that stuff. You ought to have enough respect for your mom and dad not to do it under their roof. Is that right? You ought to have enough respect to say, look, my mom and dad don't like that. And I love them, and I want to be respectable to them, and I want to honor them. And you can do it on your own. You do whatever you want to on your own. That's your life. You do whatever you want to, I reckon. Sin will find you out, and you'll pay for it one day. But if you just keep on and keep on and keep on, but you ought to have enough respect for your mom and dad to know they are not for that, and they're Christians, and they're Bible believers, and I know good and well that they're not that way. And when you go visit them, you ought not be participating in junk under their roof and around them in their presence. There's just some things that are just not respectful to your mom and dad, and you're not honoring them that way. Of course, you're not honoring them with the life that you live, but at the very least, when you're around them, do what you can to be able to, just make them as comfortable, I guess, as possible as what you can. Is it a roundabout way to say that? There's a lot of things as children, even though we're not children anymore. We're still, we're grown up and have our own kids and our own life and our own family and our own jobs and pay our own bills now. And by the way, that's something too. Don't lean on mom and dad the rest of your life to pay your bills. Pay your own bills. If you can't afford a car, don't buy it. If you can't afford a house, don't buy it. If you're all, and mom and dad, if they come knocking at your door all the time asking them for money, you need to tell them no. There ain't nothing wrong with that. If they need to borrow $100 and they pay you back, the next day or the next week, whatever. But you better be careful about junk like that. When you get your own family, that is your responsibility now. It is not your mom and dad to raise you the rest of their life. Isn't that right? I feel a little God on that, I believe. And what you ought to do is you ought to leave and cleave. You ought to cleave to your wife, and you ought to leave your mom and dad and have your own family and work a job and not go in debt so much that you can't afford to be able to even live or do anything. And if you go on vacation, it ain't up to your mom and dad to pay for it either. I don't care if they go with you or not. Y'all can split the cost if you want to, that's fine. But it's not up to mom and dad to take you here, there, and yonder when you're 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years old and pay for everything on that trip. That is a bunch of garbage is what that is. And that's going to be it. What are you going to do when mom and dad's dead and gone? You're not going to be going on any trips anymore. Isn't that right? That's right. Maybe I made some of y'all mad about that, but it'd be okay. I don't think I made anybody mad because y'all know that's right. You become an adult, you need to start taking care of yourself. That's the responsibility of a child. Your mom and dad may still be living. Your dad may be a millionaire. I don't know if anybody's dad that is, but if he is, it don't matter. You ought to make your own way. You ought to pay your own way. And if you can't pay your own way, you ought not go anywhere. Amen. That's right. That's right. Lord, help us today. Lord, help us today. All right, well, I'm done. I don't know if anybody wants to come pray or not. You can stand, you can come pray and ask God to help you. Might be a child, and you got your mom and dad still living. You need to be a good influence to them. You might be a child living under their roof.